Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Robert Chakowski with On Demand Advisors, managing partner at the company. And I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. I hope that this is the most important webinar that you'll attend in 2020. Now, for many executives that we work with, 2020 has not lived up to expectations because of the pandemic, because of the challenges in some of the industries that they serve, and because of the tendency of their customers and prospects to postpone decisions. So today, what we really want to talk about is the plan for 2021. How do you have a very significant increase in revenue in 2021? How do you do that in a demonstrable way? And we're going to share all that with you today. So we're going to talk not only about how do you engineer your revenue growth in terms of the plan for 2021, we're going to talk about how do you gain the success that you want. How do you achieve the alignment across your management team that you're looking for? And how do you determine the right strategy that's going to deliver the results you're looking for? So we want to let you know that today it's about participation. So as you have questions, please post the questions on today's webinar. As we've always done in the past, we'll make sure that we answer every question. So in some cases, we've had an enormous number of questions. And if we haven't gotten to your question during the webinar, we'll follow up with you after the webinar so that you can get your question addressed. In addition, we're going to be recording today's webinar in the event that you like to share that with other members of your management team so that you can get them aligned in terms of what you want to accomplish in 2021. We've got a tremendous cross-section of companies joining us today. And what we're going to talk about for you as a company is this will apply to small companies, to startups. It will apply to mid-stage companies, and this will also apply to large public companies. And we'll talk later on about some of the companies we work with because we work with all types of companies, all stages of growth. But in the end, it's about engineering your revenue growth, and we're going to talk about how do you do that. And so we've got companies today coming to us and joining us that provide surveying equipment. One company provides a healthcare revenue cycle management solution. Another company joining us today provides account reconciliation software. Another one provides shipping solutions, cloud solutions, corporate performance management solutions. And so we've got just a wonderful array of companies that are joining us today. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the diversity. We also appreciate the opportunity to give you the type of breakthrough information that you can apply to your business as we go forward. Okay, so let's get started. What's the level of revenue growth that you want to achieve in 2021, and how do you get there? So there's a natural gap between where you are today and where you want to get to. And so we're going to talk about how do you bridge that gap. So when we talk to many executives, we'll sit down and talk to them and say, what's the type of growth you're looking for in 2021? And in some cases, it may be 30% year over year, it may be 50%, and maybe 100% year over year. But it's great to have a number, and that's just a starting point. So it's much more than the number, of course, but the number is the genesis to say, how do we engineer to that number? How do we engineer the outcomes that we want as a team? So why don't we ask for your input now, and let me go ahead and talk a little bit about our poll that we have coming up here. And just a little bit of background about Craig and I. We founded On Demand Advisors 12 years ago as a global revenue acceleration agency. And we're going to be facilitating our discussion today. So for myself, I've been a serial CEO for public and private companies in Silicon Valley. And I've helped build 10 different B2B companies at different stages of growth. Craig has a tremendous background as the Chief Marketing Officer for both public and private companies. And before that, he spent a lot of time branding and doing corporate branding for large companies like Google, like Levi Strauss, like Nike, and so forth. And so a lot of great companies. So together, in conjunction with our team that we have, we bring tremendous expertise in the areas of strategy, marketing, sales, and business development. So we look forward to sharing that knowledge with you. One of the things that we always want to bring to the table too is the serial knowledge that you need that you can benefit from. So if I hire a executive, let's say a chief sales officer into my company, I know I'm going to be bringing that expertise that they have in their career. What we try to do is we try to take this experience that we have across hundreds of companies, B2B companies, and provide that best practices and experience to you today. So we're going to talk a lot about revenue growth innovations too. It's not about just doing the tried and true. It's about doing things that are unusual, perhaps things that you haven't even heard of in the past, and how you can apply them to your business. So just a little bit of background, how do we work with our clients? We work with them typically one of three ways. We work with them as advisors to actually help them create the plan, as we're talking about today, and gain alignment with their management team. We help them in terms of being complementary, in terms of extending the capacity that they currently have and scaling that capacity. And we also help them in terms of being an outsourced partner to provide all of the services that we're talking about today. Because in the end, what good is a plan if you can't execute the plan? So one thing that really makes us different than perhaps a marketing agency is it's not about just top of funnel, creating market qualified leads. It's about the connected process of revenue creation and how everything needs to be orchestrated to get the job done. Because with any process, whether it's a financial process at your company, a logistics one, an IT process, or any other process, it's connected. So everything has to work extremely well. Everything has to perform. Okay, so let's open up for a poll here if we could, and ask for your opinion. I'll launch this poll and appreciate everybody joining us today in the poll, and I'll share the results as we go forward and look at this. So the first question really is, what are your revenue growth goals for next year? What would you like to accomplish in 2021? Compared to this year, would you like to keep revenue approximately the same? Would you like to grow it by 25%? Perhaps 50%? Perhaps more? Or would you really like to think out of the box and grow it by doubling revenue year over year? So go ahead if you could and make sure that that poll is launched for you and distribute that and go ahead and weigh in. Love to get your thoughts on that. And by the way, we work with companies at all stages. So some companies we work with, the CEO says, hey, we would like to sit down and grow revenue and double revenue every year going forward. And we've done that. Some companies say we'd like to grow revenue by 30% year over year. And we've helped them to do that. So all things are attainable. We just need the proper plan and the right resources and strategy to get the job done. So thank you for participating. And let me go ahead and if you could get your last polls in, I'll share the results with everyone. So thank you for participation. That's fantastic. Okay, and here are the results. So fortunately, none of you want to keep the revenue the same as you did this year, going to next year. 26% stated you like to grow revenue by 25% or less. 40%, the number one, says you like to grow between 26 to 50%, which is fantastic. 17% would like to grow by 51% or more, and 17% would like to double revenue year over year. So that's fantastic. So thank you very much for participating in that. We've got another one here we'd like to get your opinion on. So what's your biggest challenge then to revenue growth? When you think about revenue growth and how you're going to orchestrate that today, we all have challenges that we want to address or overcome. So is your challenge, you would say, and pick one, that you need to better understand your buyer and their priorities? Is it that you don't have the resources to scale your marketing efforts? Is it that you need more quality sales opportunities that you can close? Perhaps is it that you need consistent demand creation every month, month in and month out? Or perhaps you need better performance from your sales organization. So go ahead and participate in this, and again, we'll share the results. And I love to do that. This is really about shared knowledge that we all have with each other, and really being able to figure out the best path for each of us as we move forward into 2021. Okay, and just a couple more responses. Thank you very much. Okay, and let me go ahead and I'll close the poll and show the results here. Okay, here's the results. So 19% of you stated that you'd like to have a better understanding of your buyer and their priorities. That's excellent. 5% stated that you don't have the resources to scale your marketing efforts. Number one is that you need more quality sales opportunities that you can close. Second place is you need consistent demand creation month in and month out. And finally, 11% of you stated that you need a better performance from your sales organization. So that's excellent, excellent feedback. Thank you very much for participating in that. So let's talk about our agenda for today. What we're going to do is talk about creating your 2021 revenue growth plan. And we're going to break this down into a couple different areas. And we'll go through each one of these in detail. New customer acquisition, customer upsell, cross-sell, selling through partners, if you don't do this today or if you're thinking about it. And then finally, how do you get the accretive revenue you're looking for when you enter new markets or launch new services or solutions? The second thing we're going to talk about is leveraging our revenue growth best practices. So we've created a set of best practices. We're always evolving them over the past 12 years. And so we're going to share those with you and talk about how they can be applied at your business. So when you have the plan and the strategy, when you have the best practices, now it's about execution. So we're going to talk about deploying your revenue growth engine for 2021. And then finally, we're going to talk about some revenue growth innovations. Our last webinar, we talked about how buyer intelligence can actually help you win your buyers, help you win your target audiences. And we talk about that, it really is talking about how do you get in the head of your decision maker? How do you really understanding what's important to them? How do you statistically figure that out so that when you're going through this process, you can find a view that is representative of a broader audience? Our next webinar is going to be about market intelligence. If the first one was about understanding your buyer, now it's really understanding your market. And we're going to talk about how do you actually win your market, not just win opportunities in the market, but actually go win that market. The webinar after this is going to be about a sales-driven website, something you may or may not have heard about. The sales-driven website is something we've created at On Demand Advisors. And what that's really focusing on is the most important real estate that you have today is your website. So when people come to your website, when they land on the website, how do you actually enable their buyer's journey? How do you accelerate that with velocity? And how do you provide just the right information that they're looking for to make a decision for your company? And finally, the next webinar after this is going to be about a proactive partner program. So many partner programs that we look at are what I would call passive or opportunistic, meaning that there are opportunities that close with partners, but usually you're not getting the efficiency or getting the number of opportunities that you'd like to get from that partner or partner relationship. So we're going to be talking about that too. So just some very exciting things coming up both for this month in terms of December, as well as coming up in January. So when we think about your 2021 revenue growth plan, there are a couple of things that would be important to think about as you're creating your plan. Number one is being intentional, which is getting the revenue that you want. One of the companies that we worked with stated that they wanted to grow revenue by 30% year over year. But we asked them, where should that revenue come from? Which type of companies, which segments, which industries, and so forth. And so we worked through that process with them because you can't engineer the results if you don't know what the outcome is that you're looking for. So we worked through that process, understood the companies, and we're very intentional about what we wanted to achieve. The second thing is having a revenue growth plan which is predictable. So whatever you put in place, it should give you predictability, not only in terms of this quarter, but also as you're creating revenue for future quarters. How do you do that? And how do you do that in a demonstrable way? And so we're going to talk about that. Next is consistency. And you see this with a lot of companies, especially public companies that are going through their earnings call and posting results. And what they're really concerned about is missing the analyst expected number that they have for their company. So if you miss the top line or you miss the bottom line, the earnings, then obviously your stock takes a big hit. So really, it's about consistency. And so we're going to talk about how do you have this consistency with a revenue growth engine. The next area is capital efficiency. So each of us are going to spend X number of dollars in marketing, sales, business development, in other areas. And we want to make sure that we're getting the ROI we're looking for. We want to make sure that we understand what needs to be done in December, what needs to be done in Q1, what needs to be done in 2021, and what's the proper sequencing. And then finally, what we're trying to do with a plan like this is to make sure that it cuts across all the silos. So whether you're a small company or a large company, typically companies can create silos. There may be a silo for sales, one for marketing, one for business development and alliances and so forth. And what you're really looking at is a plan that integrates everybody together so everybody's operating the same way. So let's talk about creating your annual growth plan for this year. And let's start off with an expectation, which is that you wanted to create an incremental $8 million of revenue for 2021. Now, your number, and obviously the plan that we could actually help you create could be different. It could be $80 million, it could be $800 million, or it could be 800,000. So it really depends on what you're looking at accomplishing. But for the purposes of our illustration today, we're going to use $8 million. And that's going to come from a number of different sources. So first of all, we're going to talk about this, which is the 3 funnels. And if you've joined us before, we'll talk about how we break apart one funnel that most companies have to 3 funnels. So think about this first funnel as being marketing. This is where you're going to create your leads. This is where you're going to create the interest and engagement with your target audience, your target buyers. The second area or second funnel is lead conversion. This is where leads get converted from what we call market qualified leads into sales qualified leads. And this final funnel that we all know and love is the sales funnel. And that's where you take a sales opportunity to close. So as we look at this, we love to break this apart. Many companies have one funnel or one pipeline. We'd like to break that apart into 3 funnels. And we like to help you think about how do you engineer the results and the accomplishments that you're going to have on a month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter basis as we're thinking about 2021. So let's talk about some of these areas, and I'll give you an example in each. So first of all, in terms of new customer acquisition. So when you think about new customer acquisition, you're typically breaking this down by industry. So you may sell by industry. You may sell to healthcare, financial services, oil and gas, or another industry. And so you're looking at creating these funnels by industry. You may also break it down by solution. So you may break it down and say, we've got certain solutions that are going to be focused on process-based solutions. We've got some management solutions or visibility solutions. We've got some analytics over here. Or you may break it down by geography. You may say we've got different theaters. So we're going to do this type of analysis, and we're going to break this down by EMEA, the Americas, and Asia Pac. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. But when you think about new customer acquisition, we always think about what it is that we're going to engineer here. So first of all, in this case, for new customers, we wanted to get an additional $4 million. And if our typical transaction value is $100,000, then math tells us that we're going to need 40 transactions to close this year, coming up in 2021. Now, all of you know what your conversion rate is from a sales opportunity, or SQL, to close. In this case, we're using 25% or 1 out of 4. And so that means that we need to create 160 sales qualified leads or sales opportunities for this year, as we're thinking about 2021. Now that's their sales funnel. In front of that, and this is where most companies go wrong, they don't create these two funnels in front of their sales funnel. So they constantly look at churning over the same opportunities over and over again. We'd like to think that you should be staging your prospects and buyers through each of these funnels. And so this first funnel over here is marketing. This is the campaigns that you're going to initiate to create sales leads or marketing qualified leads, I should say, with your target audience. So here, this could be webinars like today. It could be email campaigns. It could be social media. It could be any number of things. So there are lots and lots of different campaigns we're going to talk about today. And then the middle funnel is where you take that market qualified lead and you convert them into a sales qualified lead. And while this is called lead management, it's really about lead development. So typically for most B2B companies, only 10% of their market qualified leads are ready to be converted into sales qualified leads, meaning they're sales ready. So what we need to do is you need to have the tools to be able to convert them, to work with your champion to become a sales qualified lead or opportunity. So when you think about this, and we just did the math here, as you can see, we broke this down to say how many market qualified leads need to be created per month, which is 133. Of those 133, based upon this conversion rate, we need to convert them into 13 sales qualified leads per month. And those sales qualified leads, we need to convert those into 3.4 new transactions per month. This is what we call revenue engineering, which is really being able to connect the dots. The reason why this process is so important is because it tells you what needs to be done now on a monthly basis, what needs to be created. So we know going into 2021 to get to $4 million, we need to create 133 market qualified leads in January. We need to convert those into 13 sales opportunities and then close those 13 sales opportunities at on an average 3.4. The reason why this is important is it's funnel math, but more importantly, it's connecting the dots. So it's making sure that you're on track as we go throughout the year. Now, this first one was just focused on new customer acquisition. Another way of thinking about revenue growth is about your customer cross-sell, upsell. And let's say we wanted to get another $1 million from your current customers in 2021. So again, you'll notice that the conversion rates are much higher because of their current customers. One of our customers, by the way, is a company called Scoodude, and they serve the higher education market. So they already have 6,000 schools, universities, colleges, community colleges that are customers of theirs. So their challenge was not penetration, as we talked about in the former example. Their challenge was about wallet share or market share. So what we work with them on is creating the upsell cross-sell plan and then helping them implement that so they can be very successful. So instead of having 1 to 2 solutions, having 8 to 12 solutions was the key. And that's really what we're helping them achieve. So that's the cross-sell, upsell. Let's look at another way to achieve your revenue growth numbers. So channel partner sales, whether that's resellers or private label of your solution or service, this is an excellent way for you to deploy your skills and your assets into new markets or into underserved markets through partners. So when we were at Intact, and Craig and I were scaling Intact as a very successful SaaS company, we added 5,000 customers when I was the CEO at Intact. Half of those customers came through our direct sales team. The other half came through partners. So we worked with CPA firms, we work with market makers, we work with many different companies that were taking our solution to market. So this is another great way to think about that. And again, you can see the conversion rates here, but in this model, we're looking at another $2.5 million through our reseller or partner program. And partners, by the way, come in all flavors. We do have a bias for certain types of partners because they actually can do more for you. But we also realize that there's a difference between an opportunistic partner program and a proactive partner program. And that's one of the things we're going to discuss in an upcoming webinar is how do you put in place a proactive partner program so that you select the right partners and enable them for their success. Now, the fourth area is launching a new service, launching a new solution. And so all of you will be doing that today. All of you will be doing that in 2021 in one way, shape, or form. So the challenge isn't coming up with a new solution. The challenge is getting the accretive revenue that you expect from that new solution as you bring that to market. As an example, one of our customers is a company called ICUC, and we're going to walk you through this example a little bit later. But ICUC is a global social media management services company. They provide social media management services to the who's who of the Fortune 2000, the Starbucks, the Novartis, Macy's, Ralph Lauren, just iconic world-class companies. And what we found is that we were helping them launch new services every year. And so what we needed to do is we needed to come up with a way to help their prospects and customers rationalize and integrate all of these new social media services into one process. And we're going to introduce that to you later called the social customer journey. And so we introduced that to ICUC and subsequently introduced it to their audience. So as you see from this perspective here, what we're looking at is revenue sources from a variety of different ways: new customer acquisitions, customer upsell, cross-sell, channel partner sales, and launching new markets, new services for these companies to come up with $8 million. And what we would offer to our audience today is we're happy to sit down with you on a Zoom call, go to meeting call like today, and actually help go through this revenue engineering model with you to determine what do you want to achieve and how do you get there. So that's the first thing. The first thing is the strategy and the plan. The second part is leveraging proven revenue growth practices. When Craig and I were at Intact and scaling revenue for the company and doing that, just partnering with Salesforce as we went to market, and just really having a phenomenal job working with our sales team and our partners to do that, we realized that we needed to create a roadmap for that success. We called it the Revenue Acceleration Map. And the map basically is something that you can look at against your business today and say what's in place, what's missing, what's performing, and what's not performing. And so we were looking for a prescriptive way to look at revenue engineering, revenue growth. And this is the map. And by the way, we've updated this map every year based upon our best practices. So behind every one of these pictures is really something that's phenomenally insightful, important that we could talk to you about. Now, what we just covered here is number one on the bottom. We talked about revenue engineering. And you can see the three funnels are underneath different panels. So the purple is strategic. And so, for instance, today we're talking about creating the revenue growth strategy and plan for 2021. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk about market intelligence and how do you win your target markets. Our last webinar was on buyer intelligence. And then we've got another one coming up about a sales-driven website that you'll see here and here. Now, the red is about marketing. It's about marketing execution. And you can see with marketing, you're creating the first funnel here. So for your marketing campaigns, your programs, how do you put in the revenue growth engine you're looking for and then scale that and fill the first funnel? Under red also is the conversion that needs to happen, taking those market qualified leads and converting them into sales qualified leads. And that's really what we're going to be talking about here, which is what are the offers that you're going to need to be able to do that? It could be a buyer's guide, for instance. It could be an ROI guide. It could be another insightful area, such as a customer success story. And then in the yellow here is sales, sales optimization, and sales acceleration. So one of the most exciting things we'll talk about in the upcoming weeks is a sales-driven website. And you'll see that's over here in marketing, which is typically where it's done, where your website's created. But it's also under sales. And the reason it's under sales is because you have an opportunity to take every one of your visitors through the buyer's journey. You have an opportunity to convert every visitor from being a visitor into being a prospect. And that's what we think is the power of your website. So incredible power lies behind your website if it's architected correctly. And then over here in number 7 is other vectors for growth that we talked about, which is your channel partner program or strategic alliances, penetrating and entering new markets that perhaps you're not in today. And then, as we talked about with Skudu, the upsell cross-sell program. So everybody that's attending today's webinar will receive a copy of this, of these best practices. So now let's talk about what do you do with this. Now that you've got your strategy for 2021 and you know what you want to achieve, and then you say, okay, well, that's great, we've got that. And now we want to go ahead and say, how do we build our revenue growth engine? So we're going to talk about the key ingredients for building your revenue growth engine. And by the way, as we talk about anything today, because we're covering a lot of ground, we're happy to talk in detail with you about each of these different areas. But there are some core things that if you add them together, just like with a recipe, you turn out with an incredible outcome. If you miss an important ingredient though, then sometimes the recipe doesn't turn out the way you want. So let's talk about these important ingredients. The first one is buyer intelligence. This is cracking the code. So for all of us, we are sitting down with our management teams, and we're trying to understand what's important to our decision makers. And so we created the buyer intelligence program to help figure that out. And for most of us, we've got a lot of assumptions about our target audience. So how do you validate that? So we figured out how to do that. And what we created is a buyer survey, something you could create, something we could help you create. But essentially, a buyer survey is how do you engage with 50 or 100 decision makers in your target audience and ask them relevant questions, which typically we find are about 30 to 35 questions. And the questions you're really interested in is what's the process that they're going through today? In lieu of having your solution or service, what do they do today? What are the challenges or business pains that they have that you're trying to address? And how important are they to them? And then if you look at your value propositions, how would they rank your value propositions on a scale of 1 to 10? And then finally, if they were looking for your service, for your solution, for your company, where would they go? Who would they trust? How would they go about doing that? That provides extreme amount of insight or buyer intelligence that you can then use to create your messaging, your engagement, and your offers. The next area is about implementing what we call your one source of truth. And about 4 to 6 weeks ago, we did another webinar on this, which is what we call the prospect to sales superhighway. So Craig and his team have done an incredible job on helping our clients put in the underlying infrastructure that they have. So the first part would be looking at the current processes that happen today, let's say in marketing and a marketing automation system. And then how does that get transferred over to the team that's going to be responsible for follow-up and qualification? And how does that get transferred over to the CRM solution so that you can move in alignment with your prospect throughout the sales process? And then finally, over here in steps 7 and 8, how do you actually give executives and the management team the insight into the revenue process? So this is something that is really important, is to not only implement and choose the right infrastructure that's going to contain all this information for you, but to do it with best practices. So whether that's Salesforce in Pardot, whether that's HubSpot, or whether that's another set of infrastructure solutions that you have, it's key to put those in and have your one source of truth so that you can track all of this. The next thing is creating the right content offers. So this is something that you'll find, and again, you'll see that depending upon where your buyer is in the buying process, you've got to have the right offers for them. So for instance, if you're trying to create initial engagement with your company, you might want to give them an ebook around the top business challenges that they're looking at solving today. Or you might want to tell them about what their peers are talking about as far as what they're trying to do in terms of strategic direction and finding the right solutions. If they've expressed interest in your service or in your solution today, you might want to give them a buyer's guide. So if your decision maker doesn't understand how to buy your service today, why not give them a buyer's guide and help them understand what should be important and what process they should go through. If they're already in the process of going through discovery with you, you might want to give them a ROI blueprint in terms of how do they justify this solution. And if you're working together through the buyer's journey in the sales process to conduct the evaluation, you might want to give them industry success stories, or you might want to equip your team, your sales team, with competitive battle cards to actually help them understand how to win in a competitive environment. So this is the next ingredient that's important to that recipe. The next one I like to talk about is having the right campaign vehicles. So there are a lot of ways to reach your target audience. And here are some of the ways that we help our clients implement and put in those ways to do that, because every campaign is going to get you a certain outcome. So whether that's targeted email campaigns that are segmented by audience, whether it's a paid advertising program that you're doing with LinkedIn, whether it's putting in a active referral program. So most clients have a passive referral program if they have one, and we really help amp that up and change that into an active referral program. And so this is another key ingredient that you have. And probably the most overlooked of all different ingredients in that recipe is reach. It's interesting, as I've done these type of revenue growth workshops all over the world and with the executives and CEOs and business owners, I often ask the question, what percentage of your target audience are you reaching today? And what's interesting is that typically it's about 5 to 10%. So if you've got a great solution, if you've got a great story to tell, it's important to have the right reach to reach 100% of that target audience. So when you add all these ingredients together to build your revenue growth engine, which is what we help many, many clients do, it looks like this. Consistency. Converting these opportunities that you're bringing in every month and converting them into sales. And this is typically what it looks like in terms of putting your revenue growth engine in place and having that consistent output that you're looking for. This is about engineering success for your company today. Now, I would like to recap a couple of things. We talked about revenue growth in each area, and we showed you some funnels talking about new customer acquisition. So as you're thinking about 2021, and we're happy to sit down and talk to you about this, you really want to build your revenue growth engine. You want to build out your buyer's journey. That's important. And you may have one buyer's journey, or you may have many. At ICUC, we had 12 different verticals, so we had 12 different buyer's journey for each industry. You want to reach and engage your target audience. So over time, have an engagement strategy to reach more and more of your audience. And you want to be able to convert interest into opportunities into customers, and really have a plan to win your target market. If your focus is on customer upsell, cross-sell, we've helped many companies basically do this and build out their revenue growth engine for this area. And this is really about more of a different theme. This is about creating that interactive experience with your customers. And you can still do that today with Zoom. You can still do that today in terms of your many-to-many conferences that you can have online, even if you can't do them in person. And we really encourage customers to quote unquote sell customers. This is really powerful. And when we harness that, it really provides the type of trusted endorsement that most companies are looking for. On the partner channel side, if you're going to create a program here, this is what we call the Proactive Partner Program. And we'd like to talk to you about that further. If you want to talk about that offline, about your company today, we're welcome to do that. If you'd like to attend the webinar that we're going to have in a couple of weeks in January, we're going to talk about that too. But this is really about driving revenue growth instead of partner announcements. And of course, new markets, new services, new solutions. How do you understand your target audience and engage with them before you invest in the money for marketing programs, sales resources, or partner alliances to penetrate these markets or sell these new services? So this is really key. We talked earlier about ICUC, and we talked about the wonderful company that they are. One of the challenges that we had with ICUC is they had a lot of new solutions, a lot of new services that we're going to help them launch, such as social commerce or such as customer insight. And so one of the things that we realized as we added more and more services with them, we needed to come up with a better way to present that. So we created the social customer journey. And as you can see, depending upon where their customers may be in terms of engaging with their target audience, they may be wanting to be discovered. So there were services that related to discovery. They may want to be converted into sales, or they may want to grow customer influence. So we were able to look at creating or architecting the social customer journey and be able to provide the right new services in each of those areas. It became a very compelling way to talk about their solutions, as I'm sure you have yours too, as you present your solutions to your customers. So let's recap a couple of things that we talked about. Number one is revenue engineering. Got to do that, and the more granular you make it by each of the different areas, by market, by geography, by product, the better off you'll be in terms of understanding what needs to get done. And then by understanding what are the vectors you want to do, whether it's new customer acquisition, whether it's current customer upsell, cross-sell, whether it's selling to partners, or whether it's entering new markets or new services. Finally, it's leveraging our revenue growth best practices, and we'll be sending a copy of that to everybody on today's webinar. And then it's deploying the ingredients we talked about to make the outstanding recipe, which is your revenue growth engine. We're also going to be talking about applying revenue growth innovations. And so our last webinar was about buyer intelligence. Our next one on the 15th is going to be about market intelligence. On the on January 5th, we're going to have our sales-driven website webinar. And on the 19th, we're going to talk about the Proactive Partner Program. So we hope you'll be joining us for this, examples, best practices as we move forward. Okay, I'd like to launch another poll, if I could, with everybody attending today, and ask you to give us your input. So what's your most important takeaway from today's webinar? Is it that you need better buyer intelligence? Is it that you need to put in place a revenue growth engine? Is it that you need an upsell cross-sell program for your current customers? Is it that your website should begin to accelerate the sales process? Or is it that you need better partners to drive revenue growth? So go ahead and love to hear about your thoughts on this. And of course, we'll be following up one-on-one with each of you after today's webinar to see what's the most impactful way for you to achieve this. So go ahead and we'll give it a couple more seconds here to keep the poll open. Make sure that you've got a chance to participate. Love to have you participate, as always, in our polls. And let me share with the results here. Okay, here's the results of our poll. So 11% of you stated that you need better buyer intelligence. The number one is that you needed, 46% of you stated that you need revenue growth engine. 11% stated you need an upsell cross-sell program. 18% stated you need
your website to accelerate the sales process, and 14% stated that you need better partners to drive revenue growth. So it's incredible diversity in terms of what you need. So we want to follow up with you, make sure that you're getting what you need in terms of your journey today and as you're preparing for 2021. Now what we like to do is open up the floor for questions. And what we also want to do is talk about some next steps that you can take. So let's go ahead and TJ, so TJ's question was, so do I, can you get a copy of this? This is from Michael. Can we get a copy of this presentation? The answer is yes. And I'll also be making a copy of the recording available to everybody joining today's webinar. So go ahead and continue to post your questions. I'll be reading off these questions as we go through our Q&A portion today. Okay, this question is from Armando. Armando says, I have a limited budget. Where do I start? Good question. So Armando, what I would share with you is that a best place to start is probably creating the plan. So we offer 3 different options that we talked about earlier. One is to create the plan for you to create the revenue growth engine for your company and how that gets implemented and put in place. Another approach would be just to focus on 2021 and constrain that and say, how do we create a plan for achieving your revenue growth numbers for next year? And then finally, a third way that we could work with you is to focus on a couple areas that you think need the most focus. That may be on the partner program. It may be on sales productivity, or it may be on making your website a better sales vehicle than you have today. So great question, Armando. Thank you very much for that question. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at any other questions that we have here. What is the most cost-effective way to grow the revenue engine? Through social media, marketing, website improvement? Excellent question. So this is a great question we always get, and that is, what's the best way? And let me share with you the reason for doing buyer intelligence is to figure out what's the best way to reach and engage with your target audience. So every audience that you have today is different in terms of what's the best way to do that. Some audiences may be much more open to social media. Other audiences are looking at perhaps a different set of solutions through email marketing that's going to be important to them. Another group may be much better at content syndication through trusted sources. So what we try to tease out of these buyer intelligence surveys is really what's important and how to reach the target audience. Okay, this one is by Greg. Great question. Does your strategy vary by size and stage of company? Absolutely. It totally is varied, Greg, by company size. So when you're a small company, it's about being capital efficient. It's about laying track and doing that without a misstep, because it's so easy to waste time, waste money. If you're a mid-stage company, it's about scale. It's about really how do you provide the accelerants that you're going to need to scale. If you're a large global company, like we would work with Google or we work with a company like SAP, for instance, it's about addressable white space. So for instance, when we work with SAP, we help them analyze their partner program and reconstitute the partner program so that it could be much more effective. But that was by talking to their top 40 partners that they have globally. So great question. Okay, next question. And this one is by Linda. Linda says, how long does it take to see results? Good question. The first thing is creating a plan. So I would suggest that maybe in December or January, the key is to create the plan for 2021. Now, once you get to that step, now it's about implementing the plan. And typically, to get the type of results you're looking for as far as scaling, it's going to be about 1 quarter or 90 days to put it in place and get it scaling. So that's a great question, because if you're like me, you're always looking at time to benefit, you're looking at ROI.
And these are really important things to think about. Okay, any other questions here? All right, here's another question. Do you have experience or lessons learned regarding funnels pipelines for U.S. federal government? Conversion rate is very challenging on government bids, as many times you don't know the competitors and you don't know what the bidding process is. That's a good question. We've helped many companies look at both federal and state process and the procurement process that they have to deal with, and thinking through how they're going to win the bid. And by the way, I've had a lot of personal experience working with government in terms of going through the bidding process. So we do have a lot of experience in terms of working with our clients and helping them think differently about going after the federal government or going after other government entities. And so happy to share that with you. But again, we found the fundamentals we're talking about today will apply to selling to the federal government as well. So let's talk a little bit about next steps for transformational 2021 for you and for your company. One is to create your revenue growth engine for 2021. Now, we talked about earlier as far as a survey, most of you said, I think it was 53% stated that your number one goal would be to put in a revenue growth engine. And so happy to talk to you about that, about how do you ascertain what you have in place, what's missing, and then how do you put in place the ingredients for having that revenue growth engine in place early in 2021 so that if you can realize the impact and benefit in the year. Another thing is to talk about market intelligence and how it's going to help you win your target markets. And we're going to be doing that on our next survey. So we'll be inviting next webinar. We'll be inviting you to the next webinar. And so it was interesting. One of the CEOs that I talked to, I said to him, I said, did you realize that you've got a competing strategy, not a winning strategy? And it was interesting. He said, well, help me understand the difference between the two, because we've been in the same market for about 13 years. And I said, from a market intelligence perspective, they were doing a great job in terms of getting the number of transactions that they wanted every year, but they didn't have a plan to go win the market. So one of the things that we did through market intelligence is create a plan for them to go win the market, which they did, penetrate 100% of the market, and just be really successful, not only in winning that market, but then penetrating 5 additional markets. And another thing that you could do is look at how a sales-driven website can help you reduce your sales cycle by 33%. So this is really revolutionary. And what I look at with your website is join us for that webinar that we have coming up in a couple of weeks. And we'll share with you some real-life examples of how we help our clients do that. So here's the next upcoming webinars: Market Intelligence on the 15th, the Sales-Driven Website on the 5th, and finally selecting the right partners to drive revenue growth, your Proactive Partner Program on January the 19th. So one of the questions we had earlier was, which was, does what we talk about work with all size companies at all stages? And the answer is yes. As you can see just from this list, and this is not an entire list, this is just a partial list of our clients. We've got extraordinarily large companies. We've got extraordinarily small companies. We've got startups. And so I would tell you that every company can benefit from this. I would say also that if you're a smaller company or a startup company, you can probably even benefit more because capital is rare, and you want to deploy that capital in the most efficient way possible. So let's make 2021 a transformational year for you, for your company, for your success. You're welcome to contact me, Robert Jakowski, or Craig. Here are our email addresses. Visit our website where we'll have the additional webinars posted. And I'd like to say to you, let's have a great 2021 together. On behalf of Craig, myself, and our entire On-Demand Advisors team, I'd like to thank you for your participation. Thank you for joining us today in this transformational webinar. Have a great day. Bye-bye.